After spending so much time completely in the dark, we're this close to the beginning of a new era for Nintendo. The Switch 2 is finally a confirmed thing, and with it will come a new generation of games for Mario, Link, and all the rest of Nintendo's famous characters. It also means a new chance to have them all beat the stuffing out of each other. If you've been around long enough, you know that when a new Nintendo console launches, it's only a matter of time until a new Smash Bros. Game has them throwing hands all over again. Fans have been chomping at the bit for something new ever since Ultimate finished its DLC, and now it might finally be time for a new entry. Almost. While we're still in this ambiguous preliminary situation, and other big words like that, we have time to debate over what the next Smash game might be like. Turns out there are multiple directions the devs could take, and each path has its own pros and cons. There's more nuance to this topic than you'd think, and the situation has changed in the 3+ years since I last discussed this. Now, let's take a more up-to-date look. Ready? With situations like these, it's easy to overthink things. I should know, if you've been around here long enough, you know I do that a lot. So, what if this is another thing where the most likely outcome is also the simplest one? What if they just continue on like before, with a more conventional sequel that treats Ultimate like an exception? Instead of some crazy new hook like bringing back every fighter in series history, we get a game with a sizable amount of old content, with some cuts, and plenty of new stuff to sink our teeth into. One upside of doing this, it can appeal in some way to everyone. Treading a middle ground lets the game keep a lot of what people already like, while adding enough new stuff to feel, well, new, without the need to sacrifice one or the other. It's a flexible enough option that the devs could bend it to focus on whatever they felt needed the most help. Want to prioritize making the roster a little bigger, with several more newcomers than Ultimate started out with? They could do that. Want to give the game more single-player modes so it stands out better? Sure, let's bring back Smash Run or event matches, or throw in something brand new. Want to make the online experience way better than Ultimate was able to? Well, you got stronger hardware now, so why not? The devs could choose some or all of the above without sacrificing the game's identity, especially if it doesn't have any of the big commitments or other issues that weighed some previous games down. And that's the thing, this is a path Smash has taken multiple times already. It'd be familiar enough for any veteran developers that it'd be easier for them to pull off, and therefore easier to cram as much content into as their time frame allows. But it's not all smooth sailing. Since Smash has done conventional sequels multiple times before, the final product could feel less interesting to fans and most potential buyers. After all the bombastic announcements and marketing spectacle of Ultimate, a not insignificant number of people think that's what Smash inherently is now. A conventional sequel wouldn't be able to shock the internet as often or as easily, so it'd have to find other ways to win over a crowd that might not be as receptive anymore to business as usual. Especially once the dust settles and we learn who got cut from the starting roster. Going from a game that emphasized everyone being here to one where at least a handful are sitting out might not go over well. Overall, a regular sequel might be the easiest path to take, but it'd still have strong and weak points to consider. While the least likely to make shocking headlines every few months, it'd also be, as long as the devs think ahead, the least likely to rock the boat so hard it starts taking on water. Remember, just because it's the safe option doesn't mean it has to be boring. Give it a good batch of newcomers and new features, and it maintains Smash's momentum just fine. Come on, you might be thinking. Why settle for just fine? Especially when the game we already have accomplished the impossible at least 4 times over. While that's not what everyone has said, the Smash fanbase is very big and full of different subgroups with different opinions. At least some definitely have. And they have proposed a different path. Why spend so much time on a new game when you could just port Ultimate over to the Switch 2, include all the DLC, add a few new things to it, upgrade the visuals, and have it out right away with little fuss? Mario Kart 8 did that for the original Switch, so why couldn't Smash do it with a Switch 2? It'd even have a few advantages. For one, they'd be starting with a complete game and then some. The appeal of adding to the already massive crossover would refuel the hype train, so to speak. could even address a few of Ultimate's flaws while they're at it, within reason. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe added an actual proper battle mode to a game that didn't originally have much of one, on top of adding a few new drivers, reworking the item mechanics, and adjusting a bunch of stats. And it had the option to tack on even more content later on, like what we saw with the Booster Course Pass. This idea of taking what's already there and building more and more might also work with fan expectations better than other options, which could make the finished product an easier sell to fans who are into that. However, there's something we gotta talk about. As appealing as porting Ultimate over might sound, it'd be harder to pull off than a lot of people realize. Consider how much third-party content the game offered by the time Fighters Pass 2 wrapped up. All of that content, fighters, spirits, Mii costumes, music, all of it, would either have to have been future-proofed when the original deals were made years ago, on the off chance they wanted to do a next-gen port way down the line, or it'll have to be renegotiated. And if any single piece of it falls through the cracks, for the other company not being up for it or any other reason, the game stops being a deluxe definitive edition version of Ultimate. Not only that, you know how I said the Smash community has a lot of varying opinions? Not everyone is up for just porting Ultimate over and having that be the Switch 2's Smash game. Truth is, the Mario Kart 8 comparison isn't the greatest. The original Switch wasn't backward compatible, and the Wii U famously tanked, so MK8DX's main audience was people who never owned the original, and people willing to double dip since they couldn't play the Wii U version on the Switch. We already know the Switch 2 will be able to play Switch 1 games, and Ultimate was the system's third best seller, which means there's actually a big risk of diminishing returns. Doing the same thing again might not convince as many people to double dip on a slightly upgraded version of a game most of them already own for a console they can still play the original on, especially when more and more fans have soured on some aspects of Ultimate's gameplay and how several characters feel increasingly badly designed. A port would be the least capable of doing something about any of that. As you can see, this option is more complicated than it seems. It'd be a big win for fans of Ultimate as a game, fans of big crossover rosters, and anyone otherwise worried about their favorite characters going away, but it'd also mean being stuck with the same game and the same gameplay, flaws included, for even longer. And that's if it's even doable in the first place, considering all the licensing red tape that might be required. But what else might work? While some Smash fans want to keep Ultimate around, another side of the community would rather do the opposite. Why not instead, they say, focus on having Smash 6 do its own thing, the start of a series reboot that follows its own path? Where Ultimate emphasized Smash's history and brought back as much old content as possible, the next game could emphasize the new, the start of the next era of Smash Brothers. This path has one obvious strength: a very easy time standing out next to its predecessor. Getting out from under Ultimate's shadow is going to be a challenge no matter what, but a reboot would be able to forge its own identity in ways the other options simply can't. I saw quite a few fans get burned out on Ultimate by the end, so a game that goes out of its way to be new and different and refreshing could light the fire in their eyes all over again. And since the Switch 2 will be backward compatible, Ultimate will still be playable on it for anyone who misses that game's roster. A reboot would also be the most capable of reworking older content that hasn't aged well. I've seen how many people have wanted overhauls for veteran fighters. Trust me, I've made a whole series out of this exact thing, and this would be an opportunity to fix up several in one fell swoop instead of just one or two at a time, all while resetting expectations in ways the other paths can't, at least not to the same extent. Speculation got out of hand as Ultimate's DLC went on, and realistically speaking, you can't keep escalating things forever, no matter who expects it. A reboot could help cool things down, so the new game isn't under pressure to outdo Ultimate every step of the way. But a risk like this also comes with some big downsides. For one, we'd probably be looking at the smallest roster of any path. Even a soft reboot would probably have a starting roster smaller than Ultimate's was, maybe around 50 characters at most. And a hard reboot could start off brawl-sized or smaller. Other fighting games trim down their rosters all the time for sequels, but Smash hasn't ever. And doing that for the first time could rub people the wrong way no matter how many of the veterans that stuck around got reworked. That's another thing. Every moveset has its fans, even the ones that haven't aged worth a damn. If a reboot got too zealous with changing things without considering fans of the current designs, it could alienate them and keep them from wanting to buy the game. Attempting so many new things while leaving much of the old behind could backfire big time if the new stuff fails to win fans over. Instead of a fresh new experience, the resulting game would come off like a pale imitation, withering away in the shade of those that came before it. Overall, the boldest and riskiest path Smash could take is also the one with the most potential upside. There's a lot the series could gain by kickstarting a new saga, especially the whole being less tethered to past expectations part. But since it'd also have the greatest chance of something going wrong, the devs would need to make absolutely sure to stick the landing. Still, this feels like something that will need to happen eventually. The question is, will it be now or further down the road? Can we shift gears for a moment? Everything so far has been about what Smash could do next as a 2D platform fighter. We're overlooking another option, a curveball of a game that does something else entirely. What could Smash Bros. Be like if it dipped its toes into other types of gameplay? Could it twist up the mechanics, replacing the platform fighter staples we've grown accustomed to with something completely different? Could it move the combat into a third dimension with the first big-budget 3D plat fighter? Or maybe something as simple as shaking up the process behind the roster? What if it focused on a specific theme? Or pitted Nintendo against one third-party company in particular, like Capcom or Sega? Or some kind of Smash minor circuit game with a roster of lesser-known characters and has-beens who haven't managed to make the main games? Or maybe they could take the Smash framework and spin it into a whole other genre. Admit it, you've always wondered at least once how Link or Samus or Kirby would work in a Mario-style platformer, or thought about what a Nintendo crossover RPG might be like and who the party members would be. It's all fun to think about, but I'm not sure how many fans would actually want one of these to happen in place of the next Smash game. As a spin-off alongside an actual Smash 6 though, that could be interesting. Seriously though, a Nintendo RPG could actually be really cool. Am I right or am I right? There's one more path the Smash 6 devs could take, one that incorporates a little of everything we've seen so far and mixes it together into what could be the craziest thing the series has done yet. What if the next game is no mere port of Ultimate, but still uses its roster and framework as a starting point, then creates a full game's worth of new stuff on top of it? More characters, more stages, more content than ever before. Which could be a pretty big deal. It'd be starting at a strong position and building even further without being limited by the framework of a simple port. With a full game's worth of development instead of just a few new things tacked on, it'd be able to take an already full package, albeit one that's uneven in places, and create something that still feels relatively new. Could have a different style of classic mode, new single-player modes, even a more fleshed out adventure. But its biggest selling point would be even more fighters in Ultimate, taking a roster already 82 characters strong, plus multiple Echo fighters, and adding on to reach heights unimaginable by any other crossover fighting game. Could one of its big draws be a starting roster of 100 characters? They already pulled off 18 newcomers once already for Brawl, so maybe it's more doable than it sounds. Except it's not that simple. While this path does combine several strengths of the others, it also takes on several of their downsides. While it might not be a direct port of Ultimate, building atop it would still require getting all the third-party licensing renewed for the starting roster, including from companies who tend to prefer setting up deals for DLC instead. So it too might not even be possible. While the game wouldn't feel as mundane as a normal sequel, it'd still be similar to the game it's following up, so it would need a way to stand out beyond just its newcomers, so potential players would want to buy it. And if it wasn't handled carefully, it risks coming off like a worse or less interesting version of Ultimate that just happens to have more characters. But the biggest potential problem? You know how Ultimate had surprisingly little new content in its base game because so much time and energy went to bringing back all of the old stuff and updating it to the Switch's graphical capabilities? Imagine having to do that again, plus Ultimate's base game content, plus Ultimate's DLC, all updated for what the Switch 2 can do. The sheer amount of work required could be such a strain on the development that pulling it off while still fitting in enough new content to give the game its own identity might itself not be possible, or at least not practical in the slightest. Ultimate was only able to fit 6 non-Echo newcomers into its starting roster, so could a game following in its footsteps, with even more content to transfer over and update, be able to triple that number? Having more time in development might help. If Sakurai's mysterious mid-2022 project is Smash 6 and it's not out until next year, it could have a longer dev cycle than any Smash game before it, but would even that be enough? As you can see, this might sound like the most impressive option on paper, but it might also be the least realistic. If they could, somehow, build even higher without the whole project collapsing under its own weight, it might be the one thing that could out-ultimate Ultimate. But can that actually be done? And between the sheer difficulty of pulling it off and how it'd still be stuck under the shadow of a game that, again, will still be playable on the Switch too, should it be done instead of something more unique and less of a nightmare to create? The future is unclear. There you have it. 4 potential directions the next Smash game could take once it finally makes its presence known in the, hopefully, near future. A regular sequel in line with what Smash has usually done before, an enhanced port of Ultimate that hits the ground running quickly, a full-on reboot that signals a new era of Smash, or attempting to outdo Ultimate with something even more grandiose. And maybe a spin-off along the way that does something else with the crossover concept, maybe even delving into other genres. Each of these paths have their pros and cons, and their share of supporters and detractors. How do you feel about this crossroads Smash has found itself at? When do you think we might see the next game come out in the first place? Sometime next year? Later? Sooner? And which path would you want them to take? Myself, I'm actually hoping for a soft reboot nowadays. Smash 6 could start fresh with a roughly Smash 4 sized roster and build from there with DLC and updates. I think it'd be healthier for the series' longevity and the dev team's sanity. But this is all just speculation at the end of the day. Who knows what'll happen? Thanks to the following for helping make this video happen. Shout out especially to my patrons for continuing to support my content. We have a new era of Smash on the distant horizon, so expect the videos to keep coming. And if you're new here, check out some other videos like this that I've done recently. I'm big on analysis and theory crafting, so if you're into that, you're in the right place. So, until next time, we wait and see when those famous invites start coming again.